Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilots YouTube channel. And today we're going to talk about aircraft parts certification. Now, aircraft parts certifications come in two parts. The first part is the material certification. What is the part made out of? Does it match the correct material? And then there'll be a vendor certificate of compliance because it matches all the drawings and other requirements for that material and test data that they have on file and is available for review. And since this is the original manufacturer of our rudder springs, the 601053-2, it's okay to use them, and here's their certificate of compliance. So now let's talk a little bit more about this. We would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content. Now, there's no big secret on our airplanes how to find parts. You just simply go to any of the original Grumman parts manuals and you look in the first couple of pages, and there you'll go. There's every vendor that supplied parts for our airplane. And in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and select vendor 70214, and that would be the Airpath Instrument Company, and they make compasses, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those compasses. But when you see them in the parts list, it'll be V70214 for vendor 70214, and that's how you can backtrack and get parts from the original manufacturers. Now here we are looking at the compass, and as you can see, vendor 70214, and you want to order the minimum 44-inch wire length, and you can see figure 56-1 for the NHA lamp. So anyway, there's it right there in the parts list, and that's the vendor. Now, you don't need a certification to go buy that. It's like buying a tire for your airplane or a tube. You don't need a certification for your engine. It came from the original manufacturer. And then here it is again in the bow installation, and again it's vendor 70214, and again for our airplanes we ordered them with the minimum 44-inch wire length. So you can take any part on your airplane, and if it's got a V number like V03481, you can go look up the manufacturer of that riv nut and you can buy them. You don't need an STC or a PMA. Now, how does that apply to rudder springs? Well, rudder springs are a certified part because of the material they're made out of and how they are made. So now let's talk a little bit about this certification process. Now, in that certification, again, there are the two different certs. There's the material. Is it made out of the right composition material, the right crystallization, all other properties they're looking for? And then the vendor has a certification because he has all the specs and or the drawings of how to make that part. And if you don't have those and you're looking to buy one, sometimes you'll have to go to the original manufacturer and return an original part so they can make a part that matches that certification. So now let's talk a little bit more about that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the rudder spring. Well, first off, if you measure from one end to the other, it's 5 inches. And then there's a 1/2 inch turn on either end to make a hook. That gives you 6 inches of wire length to length. You have these turns. There are 32 of them. They are 2 inches around. So you've got almost 6 feet of wire right here. Now it's 0.010 wire, and then what the certification says, what is the wire made of? What is it composed of? What's its tensile strength? What's its torsion min? What's its torsion max? What's its tensile strength min and max? So as we can see here, we can look at each of the different elements that make up that material, and you have the value for each of them. And then you have the tensile strength minimum, the tensile strength maximum, you have a torsion strength minimum. Then they passed the wrap test. There was no microstructure test that had to be performed. The surface condition passed, and the coiling test was not applicable. So that's the first part of just getting the right chemicals with the silicon and the phosphorus and the sulfur and the vanadium and the carbon in the steel to make it the right material. And then once you have the right material, then the manufacturer has to stand behind it. It meets a certain specification. There's an SAE and an ASTM. It is 0.100 phosphate covered, and it's a spring coiled like a music type. Type 1 CL, and there's a number for it. It was made in Canada. There's the melt source, and was it compliant with regulations? Yes and yes. So there's a lot to certify, just the material that goes in to make up an aircraft part. And that just proves that the wire that goes into the rudder springs was made appropriately, and that's good for us to know. Then you also have to look at that's when they have the proper wire. So it's of the right composition, it has all the right properties. Now what it has to do, now you have to take that wire, and now it has to go on a machine, and you have to specify how many turns per inch are you going to make, what's the length of the spring going to be, what's the tension of the spring going to be, what's the spring pull on it going to be. Finally, after that spring is made and it's on a machine, they'll run 1,000 at a time. So after the wire is made, there's the certification on just the company Interwire up in Canada that made that wire, and they're going to be shipping it to the manufacturer, and they're going to use that wire as their source material to make the rudder springs. And again, it's going to come with all the chemical properties and the mechanical properties and the test results to prove that that material is the proper material to go ahead and make the parts that we want to make. And then finally, we have the closing part of the manufacturers or the material certification, just telling us a little bit more about it. We've already seen this slide before, and as you can see, when they shipped the wire, they shipped 1,500 feet. And then we go into the vendor certification of the compliance for that part. And then the vendor will certify that they took that source material and that they produced this part, in this case the part number 601053-2 Delta. They made 1,000 of them, Rev D, and all the certifications, that they match the specifications and the drawings that they have on file, and they have them on file because they're the original manufacturer. This is not an STC, this is not a PMA, this is an original part from the original manufacturer. Now the drawings can get complicated as well. Like right here, here's a corner section out of a drawing of one of the parts on our airplane. Look at all the notes that you have, the drawing that specifies all the dimensions, and then it has a list of all the procedures and processes that must be done at each step along the way to make that a valid part. It's like putting an STC on your airplane. Oh, I want to put the bigger engine on my airplane. Well, then you're going to need a bigger strut, an oil cooler, a carburetor with an accelerator pump, a Sentinel's propeller. So it adds up very quickly. To have a valid STC, you have to do all the work. The same thing is when you go to produce a part, it has to match the drawing and all the processes that go with that part. And just like with any new part, it'll come with a warranty, and they guarantee that they made it according to specification. And that's why we're talking about certification, because I don't want some rumor to get running through the Grumman community that Roscoe is selling unapproved illegal parts to the Grumman fleet. These were from the original manufacturer, and if you want, I have the certifications and I can send you the papers. Once that spring is made, then the spring goes off to another plant where it's phosphate coated. Now the phosphate coats the steel, makes it very hard, which tells it it's not going to wear on the hook and on the rudder pedal so that it won't break. Now the original springs that were made were not phosphate coated. They were made just like this. There was no yellow stripe, but they were breaking at about 1,500 hours, which is why they set the limit to be 1,000, added the phosphate hardening, and now to show that this is a 601053-2, not the 601053-1 spring, they paint, when it comes back from phosphate coating, it gets a yellow stripe all the way down the side, not around it, all the way down the side. So that's all part of the certification, and it shows up as notes on the drawings, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a little glimpse behind the veil of what it takes to have a certified part to put on your airplane. You can go look in your maintenance manual, look up original parts, contact them yourself. You might have to buy 1,000 of the part to get a good deal, but hey, you're saving money. So we hope you found all this useful and informative. Thank you so much for watching about this certification of our parts, and have a great day flying your Grumman. And as an added little treat for you folks watching today, here are the three kittens. Our old boy on the top right, Sweet Pea, and Tarzan, all sleeping on Luann's bed. Let me apologize for the lighting, because a lot of times I don't have time to go turn on a light when I want to film them playing with paper on the floor or wrestling with each other. A lot of times it happens in the wee hours of the night, and I just can't throw enough light on there. So please accept my apology and enjoy their antics and their fun. Thank you.